and thank you for joining today's next in our series, How To with Venko, Growing Your Community with Technology. My name is Abby. I'm on our marketing team here at Venko, and I'm so excited to be hosting this series with each and every one of you. But before we get into another great topic this week, a few quick housekeeping items that I want to remind you of. First off, all of you are once again in listen-only mode this week. Just with the number of attendees we have, we want to make sure we've got great audio and a great listening experience. But we do encourage your participation throughout our presentation. Again, we're going to have a number of poll questions I'll be asking you throughout our time together today. This will help me get to know each and every one of you on our call. And then you can always submit your questions throughout our presentation. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second on our next slide. And as always, we're recording these presentations, so you'll be getting a copy of this recording that'll be available here in the next few days for you to watch again or share with any of your colleagues. But as we mentioned last time, we want these How To with Venko series to be interactive and helpful for you. So we encourage you, if you have questions as we're going throughout this, that you take an opportunity to let us know what your questions are. And here's how you can do that. You can locate your GoToWebinar panel, which is on the right side of your screen. You're going to look for an area that says questions. And when you drop that down, you'll have an opportunity to type your question in and send that along to me and our team here at Venko. We'll answer as many of those as we can throughout our presentation today. And for those that we don't have an opportunity to get to, we will pass those along to our client services team for them to follow up with you on. So again, use the question box and chat with us as we move throughout today's presentation. But as we've been talking each and every week, I am so excited about How To with Venko because it allows me to introduce you to so many of the great and wonderful resources we have here at Venko. So this week, joining me on How To with Venko is my special guest, Jamin Steele, and Jamin is our Strategic Client Success Manager here at Venko. And in his time here at Venko, he spends his days talking with some of our most influential clients and helping them with different ways that they can optimize, both thinking about their giving program overall, but also their online giving page and how they think about their website. So I am really excited that we're going to spend some time with Jamin today. He's going to give us some best practices on optimizing your link online. But before we get into some of those great insights that Jamin has to share, we are going to start things off with our first poll question of the day. So you guys are going to see this poll question come up on your screen, and we're going to get started with, when was the last time you reviewed your online giving journey from the perspective of a new or infrequent user? And we have within the last month, within the last year, when we set up Venko, or I have never walked through this experience. And again, I'm going to give everyone probably about 15 more seconds to answer this question. And then we're going to share those results out so you can get an idea of a little bit of what we're seeing on our call today. All right, we'll do 5 more seconds and we'll share this out. All right. Looking at our answers here, we have a great variety across our audience today. 31% of you say that you have reviewed your online giving journey in the last month, which is phenomenal. And then we're kind of split beyond those last quarter, 24% saying within the last year, 21% when we set it up, and 24% saying never. So I love that we've got a variety of different experiences here across the board. Jamin, I'd love to toss it over to you and get us started. Can you talk to us a little bit about why it's important for somebody to go through this exercise of looking at your online giving journey, and tell us a little bit, when we think about this, what we should be looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Abby. Love to. Thanks so much for letting me be here with everyone today. So yeah, one of the big things we want to think about when it comes to your church websites, and particularly the giving experience with Venko Online related to that. And again, this poll really highlights this, is that we really want to put ourselves as church leaders that are responsible for these items, put ourselves in the shoes of our audience, right? And put ourselves, what is that actual experience like as a user or as a visitor of your church website? Really kind of get into the mind of the audience there. And I've been a part of churches in the past, been a part of organizations. Sometimes it's easy for us to kind of get into just task mode or administrative mode, or we're just kind of going through the motions of our day to day, getting our responsibilities done, and not really thinking or expanding our considerations beyond just my day to day, right? What is it like for visitors of our website to get to what they're trying to do or trying to achieve on our website? I think I want to kind of highlight to a bit too and kind of focus down on is not just thinking too generically about the visitors, the audience of your website, but who are the specific type of people or type of users or visitors to your website that would traffic your site? Is it your committed core of church members, those committed donors who, whether you had a website or not, would still want to give to your church, right? They are those legacy members, those legacy donors, right? They're going to give, they're going to be committed regardless of this, okay? So yes, that might be a type of givers or users of your website to give, but there's also beyond that, those other layers, those concentric circles, if you will, of visitors. Maybe they're new people to your church. Maybe they're new to your area and they're trying to find a church to attend, right? And kind of everywhere in between, right? So that's a really important consideration when you're putting yourself in the shoes of your audience or your website users is, hey, what is this experience like? If you are inviting someone over to your house, right, for dinner, you'd want to make sure the house was clean. You want to make sure that the entryway was easy to get through. There's not things blocking the door, right? All these kind of obvious things that we kind of laugh about when it comes to hosting people. That's a really helpful way to think about even your church website is how is my church website, particularly the experience of giving, getting people from point A to point B, a great experience? Are we hosting them well in the digital spaces of our church, right? Not just the physical door, the physical building where we worship, but in those digital environments, what is that hosting experience like? And have we thought through how easy it is for our guests, whether they're first-time visitors or people that have been around for years, how easy is it to get through the door and get to what they're looking for, which is, in this case, they want to give, they want to donate, they want to be generous. How do we actually get them from point A to point B with as most efficiently as possible? Yeah. How's that sound, Abby?
Yeah. It's so true. I think as we've been changing the way we interact with information, I think about how important the internet has become, which seems like such a silly thing to say, but so often when people are interacting with your church, especially if it's for the first time, it's most likely not going to be your physical building. They're going to most likely do a Google search for churches near me, and your website is really going to be that first impression. So I loved what you said about hosting, thinking about how does your web page reflect what you want that first experience and that first feeling to be for those individuals. That's great.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. And so one of the things that we really, just a kind of a real practical thing to kind of drill down on when you're kind of evaluating your church website, specifically the giving experience, is things as practical as the location of buttons that the users will click on, right? And how easy it is to find, say, the giving button or the donate button on your site. Out there in kind of the website kind of world, there's this concept out there that we call above the fold. Okay, so the fold, and maybe you've heard this term before out there, but the fold is essentially the kind of bottom of your screen or the bottom of your browser, right? And anything below that you have to scroll down to see is called below the fold, right? So we've got above the fold and below the fold, right? So some interesting statistics out there is that about 57% of website users spend all of their time above the fold, okay? So we want to make sure that the most critical pieces or call to actions that you have on your website that you really want to focus people on are actually above that line, where they don't actually have to go scrolling to find what they're looking for. So that's one important consideration as you're looking at your website and putting yourself in the shoes of the user is how easy is it to find our giving button? Is it easily accessible? I think that word accessibility is a really important kind of concept to hold in the back of your mind as you're evaluating these things. How accessible are these things on my website? Does it take a lot of clicks and so forth, or scrolling in this case to find what the user's looking for. And I think it's okay to a safe assumption to know that when people land on your website, they kind of are there for a particular reason, right? They are looking for things, right? There's less these days of just kind of general browsing, right? People know what websites are. Websites have been around for a long time. They're not as novel as they used to be. People go to websites for very specific reasons, and we want to make sure that we make those access to information or access to that call to action they want to do as easy as possible to reach. So keeping things above the fold, that's really a great kind of first step.
Such a great point that you make there, Damon, about accessibility. And I think the other thing that we have seen become more and more frequent in our society today is this desire for almost instant gratification. And that brings me into what I want to launch here for our next poll question. And to frame this up, I know I just talked about instant gratification, so don't let that skew your answer here. But when you think about your giving experience that somebody goes through when they land on your homepage, I'm curious if you can tell me, those of you in our audience, how many clicks does it take to get your giving page, to get to your giving page from your homepage? We've got a few different options here. We've got 1 click, 2 click, 3 clicks or more, or I'm not sure. And I had to chuckle as I was adding this question in. All I could think about was the old Tootsie Pop owl. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Well, we here at Banco are curious about how many clicks it takes to get to your giving page. So we'll give you guys just a couple more seconds on this question, and then we'll share out those results with our audience from there. All right. Let's close this one down, and we're going to share it out. And this is great. We're seeing some trends here as well. So 2/3 of you, 67%, say that it is a single click to get from your homepage to a giving page. We have 23% of you in that 2-click area, and then we've got a variety that either are unsure or who are in that 3 or more clicks section. So, Damon, that's great. I know we're seeing 67%. I'd love to hear from you. What do you see with the churches you work with as best practice? Yeah. And can you share a little bit about why we think that is the best practice from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is encouraging, those poll results. I think it's a perfect indicator of the best practice here that, hey, as little clicks as possible really is kind of like the sweet spot, right? We would even say if they can get to your church page with 1 kind of going to this website best practices concept of things like above the fold or whatnot. Another key concept to think about, which I'm sure many of you maybe have experienced in your day-to-day work life working with computers or websites, is this concept of click fatigue, right? So if things take a lot of clicks to get to what you're actually really trying to get to, that can kind of, not just the practical clicking, but just the amount of layers on your website, right? If there's multiple pages that someone has to get through to get to that point where they actually can make a donation and set up their dollar amount that they want to give and put in their payment information, that's a lot of clicks to click through. So we want to minimize as many clicks. And so it's encouraging to see that, hey, a majority of folks out there are making it really accessible to get to that giving page, not only visually accessible where I can see it, my eye immediately goes to that donate button, but when I click on it, it immediately presents that donation page for me to set up my donation. That's excellent. That's what we want to see. And that's really important. Another helpful thought too, when you think about your website, is the concept of contrast, right? We can talk about clicks and how many clicks it takes to get to things, but we also want to talk about where the audience or the viewer's eyes go on the page, right? So we want to be careful of making things either too busy or too washed out and generic, right? We want to be very thoughtful that, hey, this is specifically where I want the user's attention to be located. Right? So using colors on your website that have a little bit of contrast, that are easy to notice. You can experiment with this next time you go to a website of any kind. It doesn't have to be a church website, just any website you land on and go, what is the first thing or the first 2 or 3 things that my eye just naturally drifts towards, right? Even if I just wasn't going there for any intentional reason, what do I focus on naturally, right? And so those are some helpful things to think about as you're assessing your own church website. Is a first-time user or even a regular user of a website, what's the first thing they see or put their attention on naturally, and kind of focus on making sure that those things really are where you want people to go, right? Right.
And I think too, another thing that's so great to think about when you talk about high contrast colors there, Jamin, is it's okay to provide a path for somebody.
Yes.
Like you talked about earlier, people may be coming to your website for a specific reason. They may be a member that's, I know it's this time, so I'm going to bring it up. Maybe they're looking for Vacation Bible School registration. That person's going to go along the path and do the clicks that they need to in order to get there. But providing a couple high contrast buttons that encourage somebody to click on a path if they're not sure of where they want to go is always a great thing to keep in the back of your mind as well too. Those new visitors, help them get to where you think they may want to be going.
100%. Yeah, I love that concept of pathways, Abby. In fact, I think sometimes in the website world, we get lost in the language of pages, right? When really it's actually about pathways, right? And are we creating a pathway for people to follow to get to what they're trying to find? Sometimes it's clicks, right? Whatever the case may be. But yeah, I love that. Pathways is a really, really great call out and way to think about it conceptually for your website. So great.
And one other question that's just been kind of a little bit on my mind too, Jamin, is I know that we talked about pathways, and sometimes the pathways can cause churches to feel like they've got so much information that they want to share. We have so many great giving opportunities that our church is invested in, and we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to learn about. Do you have any best practices for those churches that are potentially feeling a little overwhelmed if we've got so much that people have an opportunity to give to? How do we think about that when it comes to our main giving page?
That's a great question. Yeah, and so it's a very realistic, it's a very real reality for many churches is they want to make all the options available there for donations and participation. So it's a great question. I think you have to think about it as in there is this concept again. We're kind of talking a lot about concepts today, but there's just kind of helpful frameworks to think about, right? Is that sometimes less is more. We've all heard that before, right? That's kind of sounds a bit cliche at this point sometimes, but there's a truth in there that, hey, especially in a digital space, in a digital environment, there's only so much room, right? There's only so much space on a screen or so much room on a website page, and things can get congested, right? There can be this, again, we're talking about pathways, right? We want to clear away, right? We don't want to pile up our entryway of our house with boxes and things in the way. People want to move through that into other areas of the house, right? And so if we're going to be good hosts in our church, a good host in our website, we got to think about that and not congest things too much on these pathways. And maybe a way of thinking about it is that, again, rather than putting it all on one page, maybe we spread out a little bit, right? Maybe we put it at different layers of the site, or maybe move it to other areas of our website so that we aren't trying to cram everything into one kind of rectangular box on a screen, right? To put it real simple. So again, thinking of these concepts of pathways, congestion, removing barriers for people, those are really helpful ways. Within our coaching and training of churches that are using our Vanco online giving pages, we do talk about that a lot, of how much is too little and how much is too much, right? And we do have best practices around how many giving funds and how many giving opportunities should be presented at one time. And there's even tools and capabilities within the software to allow you to bring seasonality and flexibility to the different giving designations that you present at one time. And that allows our churches to be real creative and real flexible, where they don't feel the pressure to have everything out there at all times of the year, right? They can have the control and the customization to put something out there for a weekend or for a season, whatever the kind of appropriate feel is, and then change that out for the next season or change that out for the next weekend, and be real creative and targeted, if you will, with what they're presenting at the same time. Does that make sense?
It's 100% makes sense, and I think it's so great. We talked about this earlier. How often are you looking at your giving pathway that people are going through? And I think that ties really nicely into how often are you looking at your giving page? And again, changing that up and providing that seasonality. I want to take a step back. You talked about something that I thought was really great earlier about congestion and how do I make the space for all this information. What I see as just one of the challenges that so many of the churches we work with experience every day is their age demographics are wide and the number of members that they serve are very significant. We've done quite a bit of research here at Vanco through our churchgoer giving study, and we've found that different age demographics prefer to give in different ways. I even saw we had some questions in the question box. You know, we've tried everything we can to get our members online, and they want to give in the way that they give. So I'm curious, before we get into some best practices around it, I've got another poll question we're going to launch here. And this is a yes or no question. So when you think about your church website today, do you promote all possible ways to give on your website? And we have a couple options here. It's a yes, no, I don't know. So it's meant to be a pretty quick question. Don't think about it too much. But when you think about your website, are you promoting all possible ways that you can give within it? So we will give you guys about 5 more seconds on this poll question, and then share these results out. Oh, this is a good one. We are almost split exactly down the middle here. We've got 48% of you say, yes, I do promote all of my giving options on my website, and we've got 45% of you on the no. So, Jamin, I'm going to let you be our tiebreaker. Should we promote all of the ways that you can give on your website?
Sure.
And if not, why? And if so, how do I go about that in a way that doesn't make my website feel overwhelming?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, Abby, actually the answer is it depends. It depends on how many are all your options, right? If it's only 3, well, maybe you can get away with that. If it's 30, maybe not, right? So there's some contingencies here, right? And some situations that you need to consider, right? Of all that. And what I find in my experience with church is that a lot of times the reason that there's a lot of giving options or fund designations, or even put it this way, a lot of different, hey, you can give by Vanco or you can give by all these other like Cash App or PayPal, right? We're talking about that too, is having all the, let's just throw out this kind of smorgasbord, a buffet of options out there. Generally, I find the reason why churches find themselves in that scenario is not because that's actually the best way to do it, because it's kind of accumulated that way over many years, right? Of maybe different people were doing this job, or maybe different donors or members asked for certain things, right? So it's kind of this, just kind of a, you know, like I said, it just accumulates over time. Like your garage accumulates with stuff, right? Just because this is just over the years how it evolved, right? And we've never really thought through a bit more intentional, I guess is what we're trying to do here today, of, hey, what do we actually want to have out there, right? So again, kind of making these decisions and considerations through the filter of are we just overwhelming people with a lot of decisions they have to make? We talked about click fatigue, we talked about congestion. Another one was just like, how many decisions are we expecting our donors and online givers to make before they can finally get to that point where they're actually submitting a donation to the church, right? And again, we want to think through that. If every click on your website requires them to sort through 2 or 3 or 4 different options of, do I give by PayPal, do I give by Vanco, or do I give right to 30 funds versus 3 funds, all these different things. And some of those decisions are valid, right? I'm not saying they shouldn't have to make any decisions, but minimizing the amount of decision fatigue where I'm kind of forced to make a decision before I can progress, right? We want to minimize kind of barriers or kind of this bottlenecking where the user has to go, which one do I use? Is it just my preference? Does the church have a preference, right? Where it's kind of a gray area and it's vague. And I think to our point here is being able to focus people on a very specific pathway. Like, hey, if you want to give online to our church, we are very grateful for that. We want to make that as easy as possibly can. Here is the way you do that. Remove all the dozens of different ways. Here's your Vanco button. Click on Vanco, boom, make your donation. It removes all the questions, all the decisions out of the equation. It creates that smooth pathway. Another word you could consider is like the efficiency of your website. Is it an efficient website for users to get from point A? The intent to give, hey, I want to give, I want to jump online, I want to do it digitally, I'm ready to go. How quick to get me from point A, the original intention, to the conclusion of that, which is being able to submit my donation. That we want to make as fast and as effective as possible. Think of one thing too, is the idea of a check. Or how long does it take for a check to go from the intention of the donor to want to give, to find their checkbook, right, to write out a check, to wait till Sunday or to mail it in, then the church staff have to go to the bank, deposit that check, wait for the funds to clear, right? That can be days, if not weeks long, from the intention to give to the actual dollars showing up in the church bank account. Whereas online, right, they jump online, there's a button to give, boom, they can set up a gift right there. That can be minutes, if not seconds, right, between a very safe and secure donation being made to the church. So we want to reduce that friction, reduce that time, right, if you will, not only for the church sake administratively, but even for the donor experience. And generally, we find in our experiences that everyone's a lot happier as we can reduce that time and that friction, and that kind of that call to action is clear and accessible. So, yeah.
That's awesome, Jim, and I think some great points were shared there. And I want us to kind of start to transition. I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, and you've shared so many great things. And I know something that's always helpful for me is when I walk away from a conversation like this, having somebody help me understand what's next. So we talked in the beginning, you work with so many churches. Can you walk us through some of these next steps that you've prepared to help churches that want to make some improvements when they think about those pathways and that experience their members are having online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is, we know that websites and kind of the digital space can sometimes be a little bit intimidating, right? Especially if this isn't, the audience here on the call today, if this isn't your kind of main job at the church. Maybe you work in a different role, finance, et cetera, et cetera. So right away, we've listed here is I would just encourage you to collaborate with other staff members. If you have someone on your team that actually does manage your website, an IT person, a media person, build a relationship with them, right? There's a lot of value in that kind of team approach to giving. And just as you would see things, different softwares within your kind of financial ecosystem, like a general ledger, right? Or a church database, or even checkbooks, right? For all of those different things that we consider on the umbrella of finance, make sure that you think of your website in the same way. Your website is a financial tool, a software tool within your church. So don't ignore your website. Like the first poll we talked about, like, have you used your website recently? Have you looked at it? There's a reason why we asked that question, right? Because we would see your church giving experience as one of those financial tools. So anyway, all that to say is partner up, right? Collaborate with other staff, right, to get help if needed. But just a real easy kind of evaluation checklist, if you will, to kind of go down the line. Is your giving button above the fold? Simple question, right? Yes or no, right? How long does it take to scroll if it's down the list? Are the colors easy to find? Does the eye naturally land on it? How many clicks does it take, right? Maybe we need to remove some of these landing pages and bring the actual Vanco page kind of closer to the forefront, if you will, of our website. And then things like optimizing your page, right? All these simple things, one-click access, right? Ensure that the pathways to get from point A to point B are as efficient and clear of congestion as possible. Again, a lot of it is as simple as clicks, pages, pathways. It's kind of narrowing the time from intention to give to actual dollars in the bank. We want to do that as much as possible. So I hope that helped. Yeah.
Helps so much. Those are some great, and I love that they're simple, actionable next steps, which I think is a good thing for us to take away from here. As we come to the end of our time together, just a few final things. One, I always encourage, if you have questions, we are always just a phone call away here at Vanco. So you can see our number on the screen, or you can give us an email, cs@vanco.com. A couple other things. We are going to do our next session. It's going to be on May 22nd. There we're going to be talking about how can you use QR codes to drive traffic to your website, which you'll have optimized by May 22nd. So come back. This will be a great next step in our journey as we're working through how to together. So as we close out for today, again, another wonderful session as we learned some really great tips on how to optimize your link on your website. We did record today's presentation, so again, we'll be sending out a copy of that recording. It'll be in your inboxes shortly, again, for you to review or share with any of your colleagues. And as we close, again, I just want to give a big thank you to Jamin. Jamin, we appreciate so much all the knowledge that you shared and giving us some really easy, actionable tips to make our website experiences just a little bit better. So thanks again. We look forward to, again, having you all come back and join us in our next session on May 22nd. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.